Rob McElhenney has been in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for 14 seasons, but now is the star, writer, creator, director, producer of Mythic Quest on Apple. I'm Matt from Gold Derby, here to ask you, Rob, Mythic Quest, you just a couple of weeks ago dropped your quarantine special. Why was that an important thing for you to put together and put out at this time?
Well, the genesis for us was a simple one, which was just trying to get back to work and try to get the crew paid for a few weeks. That's how it started. I reached out to David Hornsby and Megan Gans, who are my executive producers on the show, and I said, let's figure out a way in which we can get working. Maybe that means writing. Maybe we can get the writing staff up and getting paid. And then we thought, well, if we're going to get the writing staff, let's see if we can get the whole crew working. How can we do that? How can we shoot something from quarantine? And that's when it started. So from there, as we entered discussions specifically with Apple, we decided that if we were going to do it, we wanted to do an episode that would hold up as a premium episode of the show and not be something that we had to apologize for in terms of quality, somewhere down the road. We wanted it to feel as though if you watched it 5 years from now, that it held up as just as good, if not better, than any episode we've ever done.
Do you think it did that?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. What was the biggest challenge for you in putting that episode together?
How much time you got? It was by far the hardest production I've ever been a part of. Most specifically, because we had to write it, produce it, edit it, and deliver it in about 3 weeks. So that in and of itself is a challenge. And then you add to that the fact that none of us could leave our homes in doing so was, again, made it the most difficult production I've ever been a part of. But it also, in the end, made it the episode of television of which I'm most proud. It took the full focus and ingenuity and patience and creativity of the entire crew of 150 people coming together to execute it as quickly as we did, and I think we delivered something that's really special.
Yeah. What do you think was sort of, aside from the production elements of it, important thing to land in that episode?
I'm sorry, you cut out there for a second. What was that?
Thematically, what do you think was the most important thing to land in that episode?
I think it was a combination of things. I think if we wanted to, when we approached it, we said, look, we're a comedy. So first and foremost, we want to make it funny. So at the very least, if we could make 25 minutes of an episode that made people laugh and brought a little levity to people's lives, who are going through some very shared, strange times and dark times, that would be a win. But at best, if we could create something that made people feel a little bit optimistic, maybe a little bit less alone, and ultimately having left with a sense of triumph, that was our goal. So from a thematic standpoint, we wanted to make sure that probably the most important thing was that it was clear we were telling a story about people working together for a common goal. That was really the B story, but that was the Rube Goldberg sequence at the end. And we felt like that was going to be our opportunity to show something really fun and silly and not heavy-handed, yet still felt thematically and intrinsically intertwined with what we're all going through as a worldwide community right now. We're all working towards a common goal, which is overcoming something, and if just one of us, metaphorically, messes it up, then we just go right back to the beginning, or it just doesn't work. So we thought, well, how can we demonstrate that or communicate that without it seeming like we were getting up on a soapbox or being heavy-handed or anything like that? So that's when we came up with the Rube Goldberg thing. But also, we felt like if we were going to do this, sure, we wanted to make something funny, but we also wanted to explore the area of mental health, and make sure that we were respecting and honoring that as opposed to just exploiting it. And so we wanted to come up with a story that made sure that we were recognizing that, yes, of course, physical health is of paramount importance, but it doesn't and shouldn't supersede mental health. And how can we address that in a socially responsible way?
Yeah. And like, I guess, as you said, the Rube Goldberg machine in some ways was maybe metaphorical in how the whole episode came together. Also, like, just thinking more broadly about the show Mythic Quest and how you've put that show together in terms of the wide variety and eclectic cast members you have, and different elements that come together for that show. Starting Mythic Quest Season 1, how did you bring all those different components together?
Well, that was easy. We just wanted to make sure that we were being authentic to what the real world experience is in a video game company. We also, I personally believe that the audience recognizes when you're pandering, when you're trying to pander to them. And I wanted to make sure that if we were going to create a truly diverse and eclectic cast of characters and environment, for those characters to interact with each other, that it didn't feel forced and it didn't feel that we were like virtue signaling or anything like that. I mean, truly what we were trying to do was say, hey, this is really what these environments look like. You walk into a gaming studio and this is what they look and sound like. And the fact that the vast majority of the older people, and I put myself in that category, anybody over the age of 35 working in those companies tends to be men. And that's because, so if you look at David Hornsby, myself, Danny Pudi, certainly F. Murray Abrahams, as played by CW, who plays CW, that was not by accident. And if you notice that the younger characters tend to be about 50%, or if not 75% female, that's very, very true, because over the course of the last 15 years, the video game industry has made a concerted effort to start to hire more women, but they're hiring them because they don't have a ton of experience in the industry in entry-level positions, and they're slowly working their way up. And so that's what we found to be true. And then when we asked around and we toured around, that's what we saw to be true. And so we wanted to make sure we reflected that accurately.
In the pilot episode of the series, Poppy really, she's got her heart set on making the best shovel imaginable, and bringing that to the game is something that is really important to her and something that reflects her own contribution to the show and stuff. What's your shovel for Mythic Quest?
Iron's shovel or my shovel?
Your Rob's.
I just feel like, look, I've been doing this now for 14 years on my other show, and I started that when I was very young, and I'm not very young anymore, but I see very often that people start to take for granted what we get to do for a living, and I just really try to not let that happen. I still walk into that soundstage every day, and I marvel, like I pinch myself that I still get to do this. I still walk around those lots, and it's like magic to me, because Hollywood, let alone California as a state, like didn't really exist in the real world to me growing up in South Philadelphia. It was something that I would see on TV, I would see in the movies, but it wasn't real. So, now getting to live here and do what I do is still a dream come true for me. So I make sure that when somebody pays me the respect of giving me a lot of money to go make something that I have dreamed up and then worked on with a group of people, and then put it out into the world for millions of people who decide that they're going to spend their time with us, watching us, that I respect that. And that I don't put out something that isn't my absolute best. So that idea of like staying up all night and waking up at 5 a.m. and trying to figure out what's that small little thing that's going to make a giant difference is something I take very seriously. And I think that like that whole episode represents the way that I try to approach everything that I do, which is I'm not going to take a day off when it comes to making the best thing that I can make, because anything shy of that would be disrespectful to the audience.
Can you think of a moment from season 1 where a small little thing made a big difference in the show?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I can think of hundreds. I mean, one in particular was from an episode that I directed, episode 5, called A Dark Quiet Death. And the opening scene, we're meeting these two characters for the first time, Doc and Bean, and as played by Jake Johnson and Krista Milioti. And we knew that this was the most important scene because they're meeting for the first time, but you only have 35 minutes and you have to tell a story, a love story that begins and ends. So how can we do that in a way that feels emotionally affecting? And we had scripted out this scene that was working pretty well because it was a cool scene and the actors are great, but it was just like missing some kind of spark. And at one point we just started pitching jokes off camera, and they were so stupid, but then Milioti just started laughing hysterically, and then Jake started laughing. And then the more they laughed, the more we were like, oh, okay, this is fun, but now let's get back to the scene. And so we kind of messed around with that for 45 minutes, and then we moved on, and then we continued to shoot the rest of the episode. And then when we got into the editing room, I saw the scene cut together, and I thought, wow, this is pretty good, but it feels like it was like missing something. And I said, can you show me those takes where I'm just talking to them and they're laughing? And I started watching them, and then I called in Megan and I was like, hey, watch this. I know this is not what we were intending, but do you think this would work? And she said, yes. And what we had to wind up doing was digging my voice out of it, because Milioti's like laughing at jokes that Meg and I are throwing, and my sister Katie, who wrote the episode, are throwing out at them, each of them, and not really organic to what's happening in the scene. But it didn't matter. It was just fun and funny, and it seemed like they were laughing with each other, and it just made you fall in love with their relationship. So that was just like a happy accident, and those are the kinds of things that happen all the time.
Yeah. Is it? I was thinking this, Rob. Is there any coincidence that the episode your sister wrote is the one which you were in the least? I didn't want to be in that episode at all. I was really fighting to not be in that final scene, and I was convinced otherwise. But just I didn't feel like it needed that extra tie-in at the end. But that was one of those fights I lost, and that's okay. I'm willing to lose from time to time. Yeah, I know. I'm sure she's sick of me. I'm sure after 40 years of living 20 years of living together, and then another 20 years of having to look at me and listen to me all the time, I'm sure she's happy to write me out. Yeah, but you were directing that episode, as you said, so you were plenty busy for that shoot. Playing Iron? What's the thing that you find the most that you've learnt the most from playing Iron?
Well, I can say that something that's very different from what I do with Sunny. I mean, I'm just fascinated with masculinity as a subject, and so both of those characters, Mac that I play on Sunny and Ian, share a lot of commonalities. But one thing that they absolutely do not share is that Ian is incredibly intelligent and Mac is a moron, and yet they still share so many other traits and how to kind of navigate that and allow for Ian's ignorance or narcissism or body dysmorphia, fill in the blank, is very similar to Max, yet they're coming at it from two completely different points of view. So having to navigate those aspects of the character is something I just find fun and challenging.
Yeah. What was the funniest moment for you in Mythic Quest?
Like on set or in the final episodes? Like watching it? Because I always have a different experience. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with both. If you could quickly say your favorite watching and your favorite on set.
Wow. I mean, it's weird because I get asked this question a lot with Sunny, and it's always a tricky answer because sometimes things are just not that much fun to play on set because you're screaming or it's the middle of the night or it's hour 10 or whatever, and then when you watch it back or you remember it back, you realize like, oh wow, that was a really funny moment that came out of something that was like miserable because I was in the rain and it was, you know, in the middle of the night and I was freezing. But so it's like an experience is one thing, and then the actual end product is another. So for this, geez, I mean, I would say the thing that makes me laugh every single time I hear it is when it's one of the episodes, because I wasn't on set. I'm usually on set for everything all the time, but I wasn't on set for this particular scene because I was prepping for to direct the 5th episode, and I wasn't in the scene. So Meg was there as the EP, and there was a line in which Poppy and David are in a parking garage, and David says to Poppy, oh God, I don't want to screw this up because I want to get the exact exchange correct. So give me a second because I got to work out exactly how it went. He says something to the effect of, Poppy, oh God, no, you know what? I don't want to screw it up. I don't want to screw it up because it's so funny. But Poppy's line was, you know who didn't have, it was something about David saying like, you've got to move on. And what Poppy says to him is, you know who didn't have a problem moving on? Your ex-wife. And it was not in the script. It was such a mean thing for Poppy to say. Charlotte is the opposite of mean. Poppy is, I always found like the meaner she is, the funnier it is, but that's just my own taste. And so I just happened to see that in the cut and I wasn't ready for it. And it just made me laugh and still continues to make me laugh. And it's so cruel, but always fun. And honestly, anything that Jessie Ennis as Joe, anytime she comes on screen, it's probably amongst the funniest things that have happened or will happen on the show.
Yeah. As you said, you're asked often, it's always sunny, what your favorite scene or whatever sort of stuff is, and like that show's been running for 14 years. I think it's the longest running live action sitcom in terms of seasons. I think. What is there, just like looking back on your experience, just like a moment that sticks out in your mind, just something that your head always goes back to from that show?
No, okay. It's so hard. Like, honestly, the birth of my children, the day I got married. I mean, like those are the things that pop out because, look, at the end of the day, anybody in this business, we know that there's that moment of you're in it and you're working so hard to get it done and you're excited and it's fun, but it's also hard and you kind of can't wait for it to be over. And then when it's over, you kind of get depressed because all of a sudden there's like this adrenaline dump and it's over. And for Sunny, and really what we wind up in the end is you work for months and months and months and months on something, and then you get 22 minutes of something. It's boiled down to 22 minutes, and then it's put out into the world, and then people watch it. They either like it or don't, and then it's kind of forgotten. And so what you realize is that 22 minutes is irrelevant. Just completely irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. It's no longer your experience. It might be somebody else's experience now. Maybe they get to enjoy it, hopefully, but it's no longer your experience. So the only thing I really take with me are the experiences that I had with the people that I love. So, I mean, I'm married to my co-star and we have 2 children. So, I mean, that's what I remember. I remember those things. I remember spending time with Danny and hearing stories from the 70s. I remember being up late at night with Glenn and Charlie drinking whiskey, you know, and fighting about, you know, what's the best direction to take the show. I mean, those are the kinds of things I remember. But in terms of like content or anything that anybody would see on screen, it's just a blur.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Rob, thank you so much for chatting with us today and making time for us. Mythic Quest Ravens Banquet, all the best for the Emmy Awards coming up. Hopefully it has more fortune than It's Always Sunny has at the Emmys. And for people watching this interview, you can go to goldderby.com to make your predictions for entertainment's top awards and watch other videos with Hollywood celebrities and superstars like Rob. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.